Meeting is being recorded.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, and welcome to our Oxford General Management Program information session, Influence and Persuasion in the Age of AI. I'm Mike Pino, and I'm delighted to host this session on behalf of XED, Oxford Executive Education Support and Delivery Partner. The Oxford General Management Program is designed for leaders ready to accelerate their impact, broaden perspective, and strengthen their strategic influence. Over 6 transformative months, participants dive into 9 modules on strategy, finance, and leadership, blending Oxford's rigor with real-world application. This immersive journey unfolds through 25 live online sessions, combining global insight, peer learning, and Oxford's renowned intellectual depth. The program equips leaders to think expansively and lead with clarity across uncertainty, whether that's navigating AI disruption, driving organizational change, or aligning global teams around purpose and performance. Graduates join the Oxford Business Alumni Network, a lifelong global community of accomplished professionals and innovators. Today's session is led by Professor Paul Fisher, Program Director of the Oxford GMP and the Oxford Program on Negotiation. With more than 2 decades of experience in communications, education, and leadership development, Paul has worked with organizations ranging from the UN Food Program to central banks and Fortune 500 firms. His research and teaching explore how we influence and make decisions, especially as AI reshapes the way we connect, negotiate, and lead. Point of order, please submit your questions throughout the session using Zoom's Q&A feature, and we'll gather them for discussion at the end. I'm thrilled to hand over now to Professor Paul Fisher for Influence and Persuasion in the Age of AI. Over to you, Paul.
Great. Thank you very much, Mike, and lovely to see you all. And thank you for taking time out of your very busy days to just spend a few minutes talking about this fascinating subject. So, as Mike said, I'm an associate fellow at the business school. I run the sister program to the General Management Leadership Program, the Senior Executive Leadership Program, and it's a pleasure to spend some time with you this morning. Now, of course, persuasion and AI, we could spend a week on this. Yeah. So my challenge is to give you a few little nuggets, a few little things for you to take away and think about in the next 20 minutes. So I've just got a few slides, a few things to provoke you, and then hopefully we'll have a bit of time for questions, which I know Mike is going to facilitate. So, influence and persuasion in the world of AI. Now, my first question for you, thank you, Mike. You're almost telepathic now. Is AI as effective as a human when it comes to persuasion? Now, I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but I always kind of thought absolutely humans are humans. Yeah, we live, we spend our life persuading fellow humans, so it would be more effective. Well, that is not always the case. So there was a recent study published in Nature Human Behavior that tested exactly that. Participants engaged in structured online debates. They debated real world issues such as school uniforms, education, and they recorded their views. And what emerged was, without personal data, AI was about as persuasive as humans. But with even limited personal data about the person they were persuading, AI became significantly more persuasive, shifting opinions more than humans in around 64% of cases. So what does that tell us? Well, it tells us that we can deliver, if we can deliver tailored arguments psychologically aligned to the individual, then AI has a huge role to play in persuasion. And this matters because when persuasion becomes scalable and personalized, influence can be deployed across entire organizations, entire populations with great precision. So this creates an opportunity in terms of improving behavior, reducing misinformation, managing change, but it also raises a critical question, but in terms of where is that line between influence and manipulation? And we're going to talk a little bit about the ethical side as well. And the findings of this research really connect into one of the most fundamental principles of persuasion. And I'll be teaching a persuasion module on the program, but essentially it's about the fact you cannot influence someone unless they think they understand the problem from you think they understand the problem from their point of view. So that is core and is probably one of the most important slides in my 2 hours on persuasion. And AI has a really, really important role to play there in terms of personalizing communication. But before we go there, next slide, Mike, it's important to understand that AI is not infallible. It has its weaknesses. It's important to understand that all those large language models generate responses based on patterns rather than on fact and truth. And that can lead to errors, bias, and misinformation. And I'm sure if any of you Google AI high profile mistakes, a number of them will come up. These are a couple of recent ones actually over the last couple of years in New York City. The local government launched a chatbot to help small businesses access reliable regulatory guidance. The chatbot went rogue and it started encouraging businesses to break the law, recommending illegal practices. So, of course, we don't want to encourage that. Similarly, Air Canada, they had a chatbot which gave incorrect information to customers about bereavement fares. And when a customer actually took legal action, what was interesting is Air Canada said it's not our responsibility. It was down to the chatbot. Now, luckily, the courts did not agree with that because I think that would have opened up a lot of a new practice of law. But these are kind of some of the huge philosophical issues that when it comes to AI and persuasion that we need to think about. We need to think about accountability, we need to think about trust, and we need to think about ethics. Because if AI can personalize persuasion, then for leaders driving transformations within their organizations, that is actually pretty profound because transformation is essentially behavior change at scale. And AI is rapidly becoming a really powerful behavioral tool that organizations never had before in terms of shaping behavior. We're going to talk a little bit more about that in a minute. So next slide, please, Mike. So what is important to stress, however, before I go into those details around AI, that essentially persuasion is still fundamentally a human activity. When I do my sessions on persuasion, we tend to draw on this brilliant behavioral psychologist called Robert Cialdini, Aristotle, the famous Greek philosopher, and their principles around persuasion are every bit as relevant now as they've always been, and they will continue to be as well. And you'll see here, actually, this is Aristotle. We have the logos, which basically is the logic, the clarity of your message when it comes to persuasion. We have the ethos, where ethics comes from, you as the messenger. And then we have the pathos, where empathy comes from in terms of understanding your audience. And under these three areas, there's lots of different kind of persuasion tools that you can use, which AI can't really replicate in the same way. It's being simple and clear with your message. It's storytelling. It's personal things to you. Everybody remembers a story, don't they? Because it elicits emotions. It's about how people like you. We don't tend to like ChatGPT or Claude. We don't have that sort of personal investment. So that's on the messenger side. It's about listening. It's about humor. I don't know if you've asked ChatGPT to tell you some jokes, but humans, I think, are definitely better at being funnier than chatbots at the moment. It's about reciprocity. You do something, I'll do something in return. And then, of course, with the pathos, it's about knowing your audience, framing your argument, and sharing values. And I would argue that in all those cases, humans have definitely got a head start over AI. And we should never forget that when it comes to persuasion, essentially AI is there to support it, but should never replace it. But it's also important to understand, and I want to take this into an environment where you're managing change within your organization, to understand the obstacles to change that persuasion needs to address. So, Mike, if you wouldn't mind sharing the next slide. These are the kind of typical obstacles you get when you're trying to persuade as a leader, where you have a big change project, a restructuring, a transformation. So it's about, I like things the way they are. We like to stick to familiar routines and behaviors. I don't understand what the goal is here. That lack of clear vision and communication. What's in it for me? When there are no clear incentives, you don't feel psychologically committed to supporting this change. And the final one, which is very common, is everything's fine at the moment. Why fix it? We're doing okay. We're still making profits. Why fix something if it isn't broken? And these are human, not technological constraints when it comes to change. But this is where AI comes in. And if you wouldn't mind changing slides again, Mike, what has changed with AI is how influence operates and is delivered. So influence is no longer delivered through leadership communication. Now, of course, sometimes you have that one-on-one communication, that one-on-one persuasion, as in the first visual there, where you might be trying to persuade a minister to adopt your policy, a client to buy your product. And of course, that's still really, really important. But often when it comes to persuasion involving multiple people and multiple audiences, like a large scale business transformation, persuasion can no longer rely on just speeches, emails, traditional leadership communication. It has to be delivered through systems and the workflows that people use. And that's where AI really comes to the fore as a delivery and a behavioral mechanism in managing to persuade people. And of course, as I said right at the beginning, if you can personalize your messages for the different audiences, which AI has the ability to do, then it can be that much more effective. So, but let me give you some examples. I've talked a bit in the abstract, but let's see where it's happening today. And as you can see, many familiar brands there. So take Amazon, for example. They're constantly experimenting with pricing, product placement, and recommendation systems to shape your purchasing behavior. So the aim isn't simply to sell products, but also to actually understand and influence your decision making in real time. So that is a form of persuasion. A similar dynamic might be seen at Netflix, where whenever you get their recommendation system, it structures how users experience content. So the platform decides what appears on the home screen, what automatically plays next, and which programs are surfaced based on viewing patterns. So in doing so, Netflix isn't just responding to your user preferences, it's actually guiding attention and shaping those preferences. They are influencing. Salesforce, they are increasingly embedding artificial intelligence into the sales process. The system analyzes previous deals, customer behavior, communication patterns, suggesting which clients to prioritize. And as a result, the platform again is no longer just recording activity, it's influencing persuasion in real time. Microsoft Copilot, that is beginning to shape how professionals communicate and frame their ideas. So again, it's not just drafting emails and presentations, they're also subtly influencing how arguments are structured, how evidence is presented. And also this can be seen in transformational programs as well. Unilever uses data analytics and AI analysis during its transformation programs to monitor collaboration patterns across teams, identify where change initiatives are gaining traction, and also where they're gaining resistance as well. By analyzing how employees interact and where information is flowing through AI, leaders can see where the behaviors need to be adapted. And the last one is Accenture, uses AI analytics in major transformation programs to track employee engagement and sentiment across organizations. And again, they have a wide selection of tools which analyze communication patterns and feedback platforms. So the pattern is clear. As I said, influence is no longer just spoken, it's actually embedded in design. And that is a structural shift that leaders must understand. But next slide, please, Mike. There's one really key caveat to that, and that is a very, very human emotion. It's that danger of losing trust. And that is the transformation paradox when it comes to AI and influence, where AI can help accelerate behavioral change, bring people round to the initiative you're trying to advocate, but at the same time, it can also erode that long-term psychological commitment. I mean, let me give you an example. There was a healthcare organization which introduced AI appointment reminders. So it sent personalized messages, it optimized timing, it targeted people behaviorally, and appointments certainly increased, but also people felt pressured, they felt monitored, they felt almost subtly manipulated. So, yes, behavior might have improved, but actually at the same time, trust weakened. So, that is that paradox that we as leaders must be really, really attuned to. So, finally, sort of bringing these sort of strands together, what does this mean for your role as a leader? Well, I just want to leave you with kind of three things to provoke you, to three questions to challenge you, because at a fundamental level, leadership is undergoing this shift. It's traditionally leaders are focused on influencing people directly, but increasingly leadership is moving beyond influencing individuals to governing systems of influence. So I'd encourage you to ask yourself, firstly, how is AI already shaping behavior in your organization? And do you truly understand how that influence operates? In many cases, influence has already been delegated to systems, engines, prioritization tools, analytics, and they often operate with limited visibility. So leaders must need to move from passive adoption to active understanding and oversight of these systems. The second question is, where is that boundary between helpful personalization and manipulation? It's a very, very thin dividing line. And AI makes it possible to tailor communication with extraordinary precision, but it can also create subtle forms of pressure. So you as a leader must decide not only what is effective, but what is acceptable. And the final one is, how do we ensure, and this is probably the most important one, that human judgment, ethics, and accountability remain firmly in control? And this is probably the most important bullet when it comes to AI in general, isn't it? How we manage AI as it becomes more and more prevalent within our organizations. So as influence inevitably becomes more automated and data driven, there's a risk of gradually outsourcing judgment to systems. And we're seeing this, aren't we? And it can be used in a manipulative way. And we're seeing this in politics, aren't we? We're seeing this where foreign governments look to interfere in elections using AI and various communication and social media channels. So it's important to be aware of that, to emphasize that human psychology hasn't changed. We have the same drivers of behavior that we've had for centuries: trust, fairness, identity, social dynamics. But what has changed is the nature of influence. It is now scalable, predictive, and embedded in the systems that surround us. So, as leaders, you must ensure that these systems remain legitimate, trustworthy, and most importantly of all, humane. Because the future of leadership will not be defined by who can influence most effectively, it will be defined by those who can influence power most responsibly. So there's just a few thoughts just to challenge you. It's been a pleasure spending the last 20 minutes with you. It's a fascinating subject, persuasion and influence. As I said, it is a module on the general management program, and I look forward to hopefully seeing you on the program and talking to you more about this fascinating subject. But Mike, I'm going to hand over to you. There's my LinkedIn QR code if anyone has any questions or insights they'd like to share, but very happy to take any questions.
And with that, I'm going to actually stop sharing and take a look. We've had quite a few questions, and I'm going to actually work through them, trying to put them all into a sequence of a sort, because I'm afraid that we may not have enough time, Paul. So Professor Fisher, the first question that came, let me pull this up, is from it, I can't read. I'm going to ruin the name. So I'm just going to read the question, Professor Fisher. How can leaders effectively integrate AI insights into their persuasion strategies without diminishing the uniquely human elements? That might be like empathy or intuition or authenticity. How do you actually do that and drive trust and commitment?
Great, thanks, Mike. And yeah, key principle of persuasion is make sure you get someone's name right. And if you don't think you can pronounce it, probably best not to even give it a go. But no, that's a great question. Uh, so how do they do that? Well, as I said earlier, I think leaders need to use AI to enhance understanding, but not replace that human connection. So I think you need to look at, where AI really comes to the party, its ability to analyze data, identify patterns. So it really helps you as a leader better understand your audience. So you'll remember my second slide, know your audience, know what the problem is from their point of view. AI has the ability to 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 help you know your audience at scale. But as I said, persuasion must remain human. So trust, communication, behavioral change, empathy. AI cannot replicate that, and I wouldn't ask or even try to let AI do that. And as my sort of example showed, there is a danger sometimes if people feel like influence is overly automated, engineered, a little bit manipulated, trust will erode. And if you haven't got trust, you haven't really got a strong foundation to move forward and instigate change within your organizations.
So there are two questions I'm going to combine together to bring this question out. Where should organizations draw the line between intelligent personalization and manipulation when using AI-driven persuasion tools? And what is the responsibility of us as leaders to draw attention to that?
Okay, so yeah, so I mean, I think organizations should draw the line at the point where influence shifts from supporting informed choice to covertly steering behavior in ways people would not knowingly accept. So influence, people still need to have options, don't they? People still need to have choice. And if it's informing, giving them more tools to help them make a better decision, that is great. When you're and this is where manipulation comes in, where you're covertly steering behavior in ways that people would not knowingly accept, but start moving down in that direction. Of course, I mean, I gave the example of interference in foreign elections, and what we've seen in many elections over the last few years is that form of manipulation, casting doubt on people, challenging real facts. And I think we saw it in the UK from Brexit, and that's continued ever since in the US elections. I know it's been happening in Hungary as well, but didn't actually affect the outcome. So I think intelligent personalization is legitimate when it improves clarity, relevance, and accessibility, helping people understand options and make decisions. It becomes manipulation when it exploits our biases, our emotional vulnerabilities. And you've seen a recent case actually in the US involving Meta in regard to that, and pushes outcomes that primarily benefit, which can be sort of negative and primarily benefit a particular organization at the expense of yourself. Does that make sense? That was the second question, wasn't it?
Yeah, the second question was actually what's the responsibility of a leader as we're actually developing ourselves in this program to be better managers? What is our responsibility as a leader to draw attention to these details?
I mean, I think our responsibility, as I said when I gave you those sort of questions at the end, is you are responsible as a leader to understand how AI is shaping behavior within your organization, and to make sure that you have an active understanding and oversight of that, to be aware of that boundary between helpfully personalizing a message and manipulating, and ensuring that humans still remain in control.
The next question comes from Sathavahan. And he actually has written, do you think there should always be human oversight to monitor and guide AI agents, ensuring trust and preventing misuse? And he goes on to point out that this suggests that while AI may never fully replace humans, it can significantly enhance service speed and provide 24/7 availability. But it raises the challenge that humans don't actually exist 24/7.
No, absolutely, and yeah, I mean you're quite right. Chatbots are incredibly effective, and I mean I use them quite a lot as well, and it's lovely to be able to kind of have instant communication, not between banking hours, between 8 and 5. So I think I mean obviously chatbots are continuing to evolve and become ever more sophisticated, but as I said earlier they're still not flawless, are they? They're still fallible, as we saw with the New York City and the Air Canada example. So it's important ultimately to have a human oversight of these moving forward, I'd say as well. But it's getting a balance, isn't it? Obviously, the human isn't going to be monitoring 24/7, but it's important to understand that these large language models just create predictive patterns. So they create probabilities rather than actual facts. And it's important to be aware of that.
Excellent. We have time for two more questions. So I'm going to tee up the first question, and another one just came in from an anonymous attendee. The first question reads, as you look forward 5 years, what do you predict will be the most significant shifts in negotiation dynamics as AI becomes more embedded, even invisible in decision making?
Well, I mean, obviously we're moving into the kind of negotiation field a little bit here. AI is already playing a really quite important role in negotiation. I think if you negotiate with Walmart, you're a member of the supply chain, you might actually be negotiating with a bot rather than a human being. But I'd say that AI has a really important role to play in a number of key areas in negotiations. So in terms of the preparation phase, AI's ability to model best practices, to manage huge amounts of data, to generate creative options, to understand complex systems, AI can be incredibly powerful there. And of course, some negotiations are incredibly complicated. Trade negotiations, the Canada had a 9 year negotiation with the European Union about a free trade agreement, multiple sectors, multiple parties. AI is incredibly can be incredibly powerful in helping structure those. So I'd say in that preparation strategy building stage, uh, I think there's a case for AI at some stage in the mediation side of negotiation because AI doesn't have an ego, it doesn't have emotions, and I think often emotions are good, but when you want a neutral third party, there's certainly something to be said for adopting AI's approach. I think AI is very good in practicing negotiations. On some of our programs at Oxford, we have avatars, so you can actually negotiate with the avatar. The one thing I'd suggest there is a way to go on is actually having your AI agent negotiating on behalf of you against another AI agent, because at the moment the research kind of tends to show that AI agents can be quite transactional, and of course you haven't got that trust and relationship element there. But it's a fascinating field. We have our negotiation program coming up in June in Oxford. We're spending a much more time focusing on AI and the implications. So it's there's a lot happening there, and the negotiation landscape is definitely changing.
And the last question for today, and as we are almost at the time, what do you think? Oh, there's another one that popped in, but we won't be able to get to it. What do you think persuading of AI can help in company finance for leaders? This
In
came from an
company,
anonymous. Yeah, it basically said, how do you think AI can help? The question reads on persuasion and leaders. So what I suspect he's actually trying to get at is there's a lot of challenges that actually come up when we're actually dealing with financial kinds of decisions, which are purely,
sure.
oftentimes purely transactional. But behind the numbers are people, their stories. Where does AI play and how do humans play in that space?
in the finance space. I mean, obviously AI has a lot of potential benefits in the finance space, whether it be reducing forecasting errors, improving compliance, catching anomalies. I think it's can be really effective, yeah, in cost savings, cash flow predictability, all those different areas. So I think AI has a really important role to play in that. But of course, again, humans tend to come to the fore, don't they? And I think in finance in particular, um, leaders are often cautious. They're data driven and they're very much accountable to the potential risks. So AI needs to work very closely with humans in that area of business as well.
Thank you so much today, Professor Paul Fisher. And thank you, everyone, for the questions. For the ones that came in after we were not able to answer them, we will actually field them and get you answers. Appreciate your time today, and thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. As you would see, this is actually one module in our general management program, and we hope you actually enjoy. Thank you, and take care. Have a lovely day ahead, Professor Paul and everyone on the call.
Good to see you all. Thank you very much.